Joel, tell us a little bit about Richard Loving, the character you play in this film.
Richard is one half of the Lovings, Richard was a brick mason who lived in Caroline County and married his neighbour, Mildred, which started a whole lot of strife. Married in DC, knowing that it wasn't legal in Virginia, but he brought the certificate home and thought that that would be cool. He suspected, and then that's where all the trouble started. And they were the couple that were thrust into the spotlight of finding themselves in a sort of unwilling position of being kind of revolutionaries for a big civil rights change in the landscape of marriage equality.
Well, it is such a powerful story. I mean, you watch these two people being told that they can't love each other because of the color of their skin, and they're having to fight the law and the courts in order to just be together. In your research, I know there's not a lot of footage that exists of Richard Loving, but what were some qualities that stuck out to you?
Well, there is actually quite a lot of footage of Richard. There's a documentary by Nancy Bursky called The Loving Story, and because she was very much connected to Colin Firth and Jed Doherty, the producers of the movie, and Sarah Green, we had access to all the archival footage, extra footage, and just simple things like Richard playing games with the kids and mowing the lawn, doing chores around the house, and lots of interviews of them sitting on the porch talking to each other, where you really got to see the kind of frisson between Richard and Mildred. So that became like a complete guide to me, and for Ruth with Mildred, to create that character and those characters. And then, beyond that question of what was he like when the cameras weren't rolling was the real question.
The thing that stuck out to me as I was watching the movie was that there's a quiet reserve to him. I mean, a lot of his emotions are very subtle. How do you as an actor convey that?
That became a big conversation with Jeff and I about, what were those silences about? I often felt like Richard was so frustrated by situations, so wished it would all go away. There was a lot of anger and frustration, I think, in him, and yet a complete conviction to constantly be led and agree with anything that Mildred wanted. In that beautiful support dance that a relationship is, he was really kind of buoyed by her, I think. But yeah, so we really were looking for, what the explanation for why Richard was always kind of like, his eyes were darting around. I always felt like he was looking for an escape, but there was something about his inability to kind of actually open his mouth and say what was on his mind. That was a challenge.
You really do see what a strong woman Mildred was in this film. I wonder if you talk a bit about working with Ruth Negga and building that relationship.
Ruth and I, went to Virginia for a few weeks, well in advance of shooting, and we immediately, realised we were doing something very special together, and we really liked each other. I could see also, and we hadn't started shooting yet, that she was very intelligent, and I suspected she was going to do a great job. And Jeff had already sort of said how sort of magnificent she was in her audition, so I was very excited about that. And from the moment we started shooting, I just realised that she had reached out and found a connection with that real woman in such a beautiful way. And we were having such a fantastic time together. I really love her as a person, and as an actress, I think she's, really, really special. And I think that's been part of the whole privilege for me, is not just to get a chance to play Richard, but to do that alongside her and with Jeff.
Given your accent, I think we can tell you're not from the American South like Richard Loving was.
Yeah.
Having an, let's say, outsider's perspective, being from Australia and viewing this American history through that lens, did that help in understanding the story?
Yeah, I think to be objective about any scenario, it's really good to stand back, and you can't stand much further back than Australia. Look, we share the same language, and we definitely share, we don't just share, we absorb all of your culture as an Australian young man, all I wanted to do was go to an American high school. I know Ruth said the same. She goes, I just always wanted to carry my school books around like this. We have our own complicated racial history in Australia. We don't have a history of slavery per se, and that's the difference to me looking at this country, and the very complicated history of that and civil rights regarding the African American experience in America. You know, and I did have an interesting perspective, but it taught me a lot too, because, you know, I didn't know about Richard and Mildred. I didn't know about certain other events in the civil rights sort of, you know, the marks in the road along that journey. Because the big ones become newsworthy. And the big revolutionaries that kick the doors down the loudest, they become the pin-up figures. The quiet people like Richard and Mildred don't. And I hope that the movie puts them along that road for everybody and in everybody's consciousness and historical timeline.
What's really amazing about this story is the fact that, I mean, it's not even 60 years ago in American history, and we're still fighting for a lot of the same things that Richard and Mildred were fighting for. What do you hope people take from this movie?
Look, it is, you're right, it's a very relevant, resonant story, and it's a historical piece that we still keep butting up against the same old things, and we always will, I think. It's just about how evolved we are as you know, as a country, yes, as a race of people, yes, but I think as just individual minds, how do we relate to otherness and what value judgments do we place on it? How do we feel about a government having the rights to impinge on governing love or race? But really about empathy and equality. And I think that the film is very gentle. It says a lot of very big, loud things, but in a very gentle way. And I hope that it just creates a good open-mindedness from people, that they really think about where judgment sits in their brain, how they view otherness, and where they maybe place the wrong value judgments on that. And I hope that for the film. I hope that it sparks conversation and good thought.